Welcome back, Focus Learners. Okay, today's explainer is going to hit us with some pretty stark realities about how wealth actually works. We're taking a real deep dive into a financial blueprint that could completely rewire how you handle your money. Because look, the truth is, most of us are basically taught to work hard for a paycheck, pay the bills, and just kind of hope for the best, right? But that exact system is why so many people feel completely trapped. So we're going to break down an automated master formula that separates the truly wealthy from everyone else. And the best part is, it can work for literally anyone regardless of your starting income.
So let's dive right into this. When you break down the richest people in the world, the breakdown looks like this. You've got 75% entrepreneurs, 15% investors, 7% inheritors, and 3% athletes, entertainers, and artists. Now, do you notice what's missing there? 0%. Literally 0% of the top 1% are standard salary-only employees. No way, right? You really have to ask yourself, what do those top 4 categories actually have in common? Well, the answer is ownership. Entrepreneurs own businesses, investors own assets, inheritors own trusts, artists and athletes own rare skills. Every single one of them is an owner. And honestly, that brings us to a pretty harsh truth. If you don't own something that increases in value, you are what is owned. Think about it. When most people get paid, they immediately pay their bills and just blow the rest on things they probably won't even remember buying a month from now. Our source material actually compares this endless paycheck-to-paycheck trap to modern-day slavery, just with the illusion of freedom. The whole system is basically designed to keep you waiting for that next payday with zero breathing room. To break free from that hamster wheel, you absolutely must shift your mindset from being a consumer to being an owner.
To make that massive shift, we're going to use a completely foolproof automated master formula. We'll be looking at 4 key modules today: 25% for growth, 15% for stability, 50% for essentials, and 10% for rewards.
Let's kick things off with Module 1, 25% for growth. This is all about making your money work for you.
Now, this slice of your paycheck, it isn't about, meditating to grow as a person. It's about aggressively buying assets that go to work for you while you sleep. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why you cannot wait to start doing this. Let's look at Billy and Phil. So Billy starts investing $200 a month at age 20. Phil waits until he's 30 and then tries to catch up by investing $300 a month. By age 60, Phil actually put more of his own raw cash in, $108,000, compared to Billy's $96,000. But look at those final bars. Assuming an average 10% return, like you'd historically see in the S&P 500, Phil ends up with around $678,000. But Billy? Billy has a staggering $1.26 million. He invested less money, but walked away with nearly $600,000 more simply because he let compound interest do its magic earlier.
So, let's see how this actually builds into a plan you can use. Step 1 is selecting your growth assets. You've got a sliding scale of risk here. At the safest end, you have index funds, where you're just buying a tiny slice of the whole market. Right in the middle, you have high-income skills, like, for example, learning how students can actively earn their first $10K through freelance coding or sales. These skills offer the fastest possible return on your time and investment. Then, way at the top, you have individual stocks or crypto, which are basically high-risk moonshots. Step 2 is absolutely crucial. Use tax-advantaged accounts. In the UK, that's a Stocks and Shares ISA. In the US, it's a Roth IRA or a 401k. These accounts legally shield your money from taxes so it can grow entirely untouched. And finally, step 3, automate your investing directly on payday so you never even see the cash hit your checking account.
If you want a really practical example of a set-it-and-forget-it strategy, take a look at this 3-fund portfolio. This is a solid, aggressive setup that's perfect for letting your money grow quietly in the background. You put 60% in a U.S. stock index fund, 30% in an international stock index fund, and 10% in a bond fund just for a little bit of stability. That's the whole shebang. You don't need to check charts every single day or try to perfectly time the market. You just automate it and then go focus your energy on actually increasing your income.
All right, moving on to Module 2, 15% for stability. This is all about protecting your progress.
Because let's face it, what happens when life throws a massive wrench in the gears? The reality is, most people don't actually have a money problem. They have a stability problem. Literally one unexpected bill and their entire financial life just falls apart. Now, what's really interesting about this is an incredibly relatable anecdote from our source material. At 18, the author took out a huge loan to buy a VW Golf, completely maxing his finances out. 3 months later, the engine completely blew up. Because he had zero safety net, he faced this massive debt spiral just to keep the car running so he could keep his job. It didn't just break the car, it completely broke his finances for an entire year. Without a stability fund, you might be forced to sell off those brilliant growth assets we just talked about, and usually at the absolute worst possible time.
So, to prevent that kind of nightmare, you need a very specific margin for error. The magic number is 5. You need 5 months of core baseline expenses saved up. We're talking groceries, rent, utilities, and essential transport. Nothing fancy. Calculate what that costs for one single month, multiply it by 5, and boom, that is your stability fund target.
But listen, where you actually put this money matters just as much as having it. There are 3 absolute non-negotiable rules for this. First, easy access. You must be able to get this cash within 24 hours without paying any penalties. Second, 0 risk. I mean it. Do not put this emergency money in the stock market where it could crash the day before you desperately need it. Third, it must always earn. Park it in a high-yield savings account earning 4 to 5%, so inflation doesn't just eat away its value while it sits there.
Now, I know 5 months of expenses sounds like a massive mountain to climb, but you can use these stacking tactics to build it up really quickly. The paycheck sweep means automating that 15% away the exact second you get paid. The replacement promise is a strict personal rule that if you do have to dip into this fund for an emergency, you make it your top priority to top it back up next payday. And the Save by Spending hack uses things like Roundup apps or cashback credit cards to automatically funnel small, painless amounts into your savings.
Okay, Module 3. 50% for essentials. Feeding you, not your ego.
It is shocking, but over 60% of Americans earning over $100,000 a year are still living paycheck to paycheck. And the culprit? Lifestyle creep. Let's really reflect on this quote for a second. Wealth isn't what you see, it's what you don't see. The explainer shares this great story of 2 friends at age 20. One guy was super flashy, right? Designer shirts, expensive watch, constantly spending. The other guy just wore basic clothes and a cheap watch. But behind the scenes, the flashy friend had exactly $43 in his checking account and a stack of overdue credit cards. Meanwhile, the quiet, casually dressed friend had over $1,000 quietly compounding in his investments. It is so incredibly easy to justify upgrading your lifestyle the second you make more money, but that is exactly what keeps you broke.
So, if you want to keep your essential living costs capped at 50% of your income, don't just stress over skipping a daily coffee. That's not going to move the needle. You must control the big 2, housing and transport. Negotiate your rent, consider house hacking by splitting a place with roommates, and really try to keep housing to half of this 50% essentials bucket. And for transport, absolutely avoid brand new car leases. They are massive, massive wealth killers. Just buy used, reliable cars that have already taken the huge depreciation hit.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is, when you're out there spending your essentials budget, are you buying for the brand or the value? Think about it. If you buy a $60 pair of boots and wear them 100 times, that's amazing value. But if you drop $200 on designer sneakers that you're only going to wear twice, that's just bad math. Don't chase the brand and the marketing hype, chase actual quality. To protect yourself from those terrible impulse buys, you've got to implement the 7-day rule. Look, willpower completely disappears when you're tired or stressed, so you need a system that doesn't rely on it. If you feel an impulse to buy something, pause for exactly 7 days. Just wait. Once that initial dopamine hit fades, ask yourself if you genuinely still want it. Confirm you're buying it for the value, and ensure it actually improves your daily life. If it doesn't pass that test, leave it on the shelf.
And finally, Module 4. 10% for rewards, basically keeping you sane.
You know, it's wild, but statistics show that 92% of people actually overspend after an intense saving sprint simply because they feel punished by their own discipline. You aren't meant to just blindly hoard money forever. Your plan has to be sustainable. This 10% is your strategic cheat meal. It allows for completely guilt-free spending in high-value categories. We're talking vacations, your hobbies, nights out, and gifts for your loved ones. Our source even mentions working so hard on his businesses early on that he completely ignored taking vacations, and it literally resulted in stress-induced shingles. Hobbies keep your passions alive, nights out maintain your vital social networks, and buying thoughtful gifts strengthens your relationships. This stuff matters.
To actually make this work in the real world, you've got to set up what we call a joy jar. This is a completely separate, automated bank account used just for your 10% fund money. You're preloading the fund, but here is the trick. When it hits 0, you're done until next month. No exceptions. You cannot dip into your growth or your stability funds, and because it's limited, you'll naturally start prioritizing the things that actually bring you joy, like memorable experiences with friends rather than just blowing it on random junk.
Which brings us to our final question for you. Will you continue to be owned by your paycheck, or will you take control and automate your wealth today? You now have the exact 25-15-50-10 blueprint. And hey, if you're eager to boost the income side of that equation, maybe you want to revisit what we discussed earlier about learning how students can actively earn their first 10K to rapidly fund these modules, then it is time to start building those high-income skills right now. Shift from a consumer to an owner, set up your systems, and start letting your money work for you. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.